afternoon. This is a candidate forum sponsored by the Homeless Services Consortium. I am Priscilla Thane from the League of Women Voters of Dane County, and I will be your moderator today. The election is April 7th. Voters will choose one candidate for mayor, City of Madison. The candidates are Madison Alderman Scott Resnick and current mayor of Madison, Paul Soglin. I would like to thank the Homeless Services Consortium and its chair, Karen Andrew, for sponsoring this forum. The timer will be Joy Cobb. Each question will be asked to each candidate, and each will have 2 minutes to answer, with the order of responses being alternated. Written questions from the audience will be accepted. Please write down your questions on one of the cards provided, and these will be collected by Karen Andrew during the forum. Questions should be issue-based, and personal or political attacks will not be read. Please turn off your cell phones and hold your applause till the end of the forum. We're going to dispense with opening statements for brevity. The first question, and I gave them each a card. They each drew lots to see who goes first, and Mr. Mayor Soglin goes first. The first question: there is no legal place to sleep if you are out of days at the shelter, which range from 30 to 90 days, depending upon which shelter you are in. Where do you suggest we sleep at night if we can't get in?
The City of Madison has had a housing shortage for well over the past decade. In fact, if you look at the data from 3 years ago, the city has the lowest vacancy rate in the United States. That vacancy rate was less than 1.5%. That vacancy rate impacts all of Madison, regardless of income or housing needs. It affects single individuals, it affects families, it affects folks with middle incomes, as well as folks with low income. The responsibility for homelessness in Madison is not fairly divided. For a variety of reasons, the City of Madison has, for a variety of reasons, and I'm not here to honeycoat this, or sugarcoat it. For a variety of reasons, the City of Madison has limited resources and does not have the ability to provide shelter for everyone who is homeless. It's the reality that we have to contend with. I believe that the nonprofit sector, the faith-based community, is going to have to make up the difference until the next 5 years go by, in which case we will added at least 1,000 affordable units, and that will go a long way in regard to closing the gap. I think we will see significant change within the next 1 year as the Resnick project is available to the chronically homeless when it's finished.
Alderman Resnick.
This is one of the most difficult challenges that face the city itself. When you look out and you walk into City Hall and you talk to the individuals who are sleeping right outside, particularly those who have run out of shelter days, or those individuals who don't feel comfortable in our own shelter system, it becomes incredibly difficult. It is trying to leverage those in the community who are trying to do so much more to provide resources, whether it is from our faith-based community, whether it's from our nonprofit community. What I would say, though, is it's going to be a difficult path ahead, but with the end goal of not only housing first, but to ensure that over the course of the next 5 years, those individuals who are trying to decide between sleeping in a vehicle or trying to decide to sleep outside can find an area where they can legally feel safe, that they can feel comfort, and surrounded by a support network that will make sure they're okay. Homelessness in so many ways, the human element seems to get forgotten in so many of these conversations, that there are compassionate people, that everybody is supposed to be treated with dignity, and everybody is supposed to have eventually a shelter over their heads.
Thank you. Before I go on to the next question, I did introduce Sarah Bliss. She is the Voter Service Chair for League of Women Voters and moderator in training. Next question, Alderman Resnick. You have both been in office for the past 4 years. What is being done to get the folks who are sleeping on benches in front of city-county building in and around the Capitol Square area into housing? Are they ever going to find homes, places for these people?
While in office, there have been a couple different votes, particularly regarding the individuals who are sleeping right outside our city council building. And I think that right now it's a reflection of our communities. It's disgraceful. It's something that I know I'm not only embarrassed of, I know many others in our city, that we can't provide better services, and this is what it's come down to. In my time on the City County Liaison Committee, when it was time to try to figure out what to do, I felt that putting up no trespassing signs wasn't the right answer until we do have a long-term approach with where individuals can go. First, it's dealing with the individual's belongings, making sure that there's a safe place to lock up in storage facilities, making sure that laundry services are available and shower services are available. Then what we do need to be looking at is a long-term approach, but moving homelessness around or moving an individual simply to State Street or to a park or to another location is no better unless we can deal with the underlying issues at hand.
Mayor Soglin?
Yes, let me start out by saying that no one who has served as mayor has built more housing, affordable housing, than I have. Whether it's the Carapace Apartments on the Triangle for those with physical disabilities, or it was the funding we used with the UDAD grant as I was leaving office in 1979, which led to the building on Capitol Center on 8th Street. When we got into the mid-1980s, we had the capacity to house all the homeless in our community, whether it was temporary or permanent. The financial means of handling the construction of housing today is very different. The federal government has pulled out of so many of the old programs, and now what we're left with is one federal program, which is the administration of tax credits, which we can also combine with extending the life of the TIF district for a year. Now, right now, we've got the project on Resnick, which is going to be under construction next month. That is targeted for the chronically homeless, the folks who are living on the steps of the city council. That project should be done in another year and a couple of months. We've recently approved a second project of that sort, this time for families as well as single individuals, and that's by Lakeview School on the north side. We're presently working on a third site on the west side, and we're having some trouble with some of the neighboring property owners, but the Alderman in the district is supportive, and I think that will be successful.
Next question. There is no legal place to put up a tent in the city of Madison. Why can't we be allowed to keep warmer and be protected from wind, rain, and snow? Will you work to allow tents in the city of Madison if there is not enough shelter? Mayor Soglin.
The regulation of tents and camping is not under the authority of the city of Madison, it's under the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin regulates it on a number of bases, which include safety and health. If there was a proposal before the state that our health department approved, I would support it.
Alderman Resnick.
I would concur with the mayor and just simply say that if we're having the conversation that someone should be forced in a position to sleep outside in a tent as the main mode of housing, we're in a very disgraceful part of our city. We can do so much better than tent housing, but again, it does go back to the state, and it is a regulation that's monitored by the state, not the city.
Question 4. Hypothermia can set in at 45 degrees. Water freezes at 32 degrees, but us humans can't get into shelter until it reaches 20 degrees. If we are out of days at the shelter, where did this policy come from, and will you work to improve it? Alderman Resnick.
I cannot tell you where this policy came from, but what I will tell you is I'm someone who does winter camping. I've been out there for a single day, and I don't understand how the body can survive and some of the people who persevered through out in a Madison winter. It's still, I can't believe it. So yes, it is still figuring out how to work, particularly at 40 degrees, but even at 32 degrees to see how we can make improvements. I'm sure it does come down to costs, but I cannot tell you the exact origin of that policy.
Mayor Soglin.
The regulation on days is not regulated by the city, but it's regulated by those who operate the shelters. Now, my understanding is that at a certain point, which is in the question, when the temperature drops to that point, then regardless of days previously used, the shelter is open to everyone. But I just want to make the point, and should be clear in answering all of these questions, that our objective is that every single individual and every single family will have permanent housing. That's the objective. And so that we should reach a point where there is absolutely no need or no reason for anyone not to be in permanent housing.
Much of the housing at agencies is for people who are mentally ill or have alcohol and drug problems or have kids. What programs are there for the rest of us? Mayor Soglin.
I'm not sure that I understand the question. It seems to me that the focus needs to be providing housing, permanent housing for every single family and individual. That's the standard. Now, there are some folks who do have substance abuse challenges and mental illness challenges. For those individuals, part of the housing, and that should be noted as part of our model with Resnick, is that services will be provided, a whole host of services, related not just to substance abuse or issues and challenges of mental illness, but also job counseling and any other kinds of resources that are needed. Keep in mind that we model this, and this is a little embarrassing. It's either called Parcel G or Parcel J in San Francisco. I can't remember which parcel it's called, but it's the name of a site. And it was when I discovered that site and that project, which by the way was privately funded, that we went to work on creating the Resnick project. And if you look at the San Francisco project, you not only have the housing, but you have a complete array of support services, including access to computers, access to what you expect in a home, with cooking facilities, laundry facilities, and obviously with a great location, access to transportation.
Alderman Resnick?
When we look at the city of Madison, now a community that 50% are now renters in the city. And when we look that, when you think about the definitions of affordable housing, more than 30% of your rent is going to figure out your housing. It becomes very difficult. You have individuals who simply cannot sign a lease, even in places that they may be able to afford, whether that's because of a security deposit that can't be met, whether it's because of a criminal record, whether it's because of other personal issues with the location, and you're seeing people that are denied their housing. You also run into issues, particularly in Madison, and it's something that both the mayor and I fought against, is many of the state laws being rewritten that penalize members of the Madison community when you do lose housing, to give, unfortunately, landlords with quite a bit of power to evict someone. Looking at ways to create more second chance opportunities with the landlord community, with the private sector, to ensure that people are able to get into their housing, and once they have housing, be able to keep that housing. Because usually it's one event that can set someone back. If one event, whether it's a medical emergency, a loss of a job, if one thing changed in their lives, you would still see housing in place. So when it comes to the long-term pieces, for those who don't have mental illness, for those who may not qualify for other city services, it's figuring out how to keep people in housing.
Next question. If buses are running and don't have people on them, why can't homeless people ride the buses for free so we can get to appointments, apply for jobs and housing? Alderman Resnick?
We should continue to be looking for more ways to subsidize metro transportation in the city of Madison. This becomes a cost element to the city council, but we should be looking for different alternatives with resources that are available.
Mayor Soglin?
There's presently a number of programs which provide free bus ridership, not for homeless people, but based on income. And what we're trying to do is find the resources to expand those programs so that we can provide greater service to people in the community. I want to point out that keeping Madison Metro going is becoming a greater and greater challenge every year. The reason is that the federal government is not providing the kinds of subsidies that it once did in terms of day-to-day operations, as well as the cost of acquiring buses and maintaining them, which includes bus garages. The state is going in the same backward direction. And the irony of it is that both the state and the federal government save money when more people ride transit and use public transportation, whether it's a bus in a city like Madison or it may be rail, as you've got in every place from New York to Los Angeles. The key to all of this is understanding that the city of Madison cannot do it alone. We have limited capacity and limited resources. The state controls our revenues. They control all revenues in the state of Wisconsin in regard to taxes, and where we do have the ability to collect taxes, they control how much we can and to a certain degree, how we have to spend it. This movement to create greater access to housing, greater access to transportation, has got to be taken to higher levels. That's the whole concept of the federal government. It's a recognition of collecting the money at one point where more money can be redistributed fairly.
Can either of you explain why, when you speak of homeless day centers, you never mention Bethel Homeless Support Services? They have served this community for the past 8 years, and aside from being open 5 days a week instead of 7, and although not having showers and laundry is a very comprehensive service resource for this community. Ms. Alder?
Bethel has come up in the discussions we've had, along with the Y, along with Porch Light, and a number of other facilities.
We should continue to promote the good work that's occurring at Bethel. What it ends up happening is when you have that recognition from an organization like the city and from other partners, it helps those who are looking to fundraise, help those who are looking to donate more to the community, and for those volunteers that put in the long hours and the services to help those in the community. I think the city can do more to promote what's going on in Bethel.
I understand Madison is in the process of installing more bathrooms and bathroom signage for visitors to the city. Has or will the transgender population be consulted for their input? I believe the city has responsibility for properly accommodating everyone in all facilities to the public. Alder Resnick?
That is a phenomenal question. And although several of my colleagues do serve on a couple different names for the committee, it's designed to figure out where the porta potty, where the permanent toilets will go in Madison. I am not sure if the transgender community has been communicated with on this issue. And whoever wrote the question, possibly the mayor has the answer there. But if not, I'll make sure someone gets back to you on it.
My understanding is that the staff working with the committee has indicated that this issue is being addressed.
Will you support repeal of the special section of the municipal ordinance regarding trespassing that outlaws the possession of all sleeping paraphernalia while on the property of another, which is defined to include all public property?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I heard reference to private property in there, and very simply this. Someone who owns their own property has every right to control what happens on it. And that's not something we can control.
You can repeal the ordinance. It's insulting.
There's additional charges if you're caught with a sleeping bag or a bedroll on private property. So there's an additional charge that they can do.
I don't know the history of the ordinance or why there'd be additional provisions as you described, so I want to check into that.
Right.
Alderman Resnick?
I would give the same actually answer to the mayor to just look into it. And particularly if a municipal court has issued citations based on the possession of a sleeping bag. I would be absolutely opposed to it, but don't know the ordinance.
Also, Taylor?
Next question. Please share your short list of specific properties that you have identified as candidates for citing the Homeless Services Center.
So, as we were looking at different potential sites or areas where we could do a potential swap with an existing organization or building who might be interested in moving outside of the downtown or inside the isthmus, the one issue is the second you start mentioning the exact sites, then the price of that site goes up, and it takes away the city's ability to negotiate. So what I would say is there are sites along inside the isthmus that would make for great candidates for an additional emergency, particularly an emergency men's shelter. But at this point, I would say there are several sites that I do have in mind.
Are we talking about a shelter or a service center? Day center. I'm fine with the original site that the county selected on Main Road, and I'm fine with the present one we're working on off of Fish Hatchery.
What services are being included in affordable housing? Mental health, supervision for safety, medical, drug and alcohol.
The short answer to that question is yes. The long answer is, let's go back to the Resnick project, because that's our base model. So what we're hoping to do there is provide the counseling regarding mental health, regarding substance abuse, regarding employment, regarding any other personal issues, and also specific services for veterans. And I just want to use this as an opportunity to say that there's one special group that we have to work with, and those are veterans who receive less than an honorable discharge, and for various reasons do not qualify for veterans benefits. But there are processes where they can appeal. It's lengthy, it's difficult, and it's challenging for a veteran who is discharged with less than an honorable parting with the military to get reinstated. And that's another one of the services that we look to provide on top of the more conventional ones.
Alderman Resnick.
What I would add to that, the services need to be in a central location. As transportation becomes more and more difficult, not only to the cost of transportation, but simply the time out of the day that it may take for transportation, it's ensuring that services are, if not all under one roof, in very close proximity. So any form of housing is going to need to be able to address the issues of personal safety, of mental health, of therapy, of substance abuse, of job training. All of these components are critical on a pathway forward, but what it needs to be is centrally located and ensure that someone's not spending 2, 3, 4 hours of their day, whether it's walking or trying to raise money for a bus fare, to receive these services throughout the entire city.
When is more housing for women going to be established so women and children are not turned away when the Salvation Army facilities are full? Alderman Resnick.
Another great question. As we plan for the future of the Salvation Army facility, both for the services that it currently provides and the transition to services that the city could provide, ensuring that before that site potentially closes down, that we have a backup plan in place. What we can't lose is those services even for one day or for 1 week, and making sure that the transition is as painless as possible. It does come back to the point of trying to bring housing first to ensure whether it's a woman in a family or anybody in this community does have housing and a roof over their head. But there will be immediate needs as we talk about what the potential for that site could become.
Mayor Soglin?
The Salvation Army has two facilities on East Washington. One which we refer to as the downtown facility, which is 5 blocks from the square, and the other one in the Dartmouth Resnick neighborhood. The Salvation Army came to us some time ago and said that they wanted to consolidate all of their services at Dartmouth Worthington. We reviewed that and we said no. It's better that you consolidate downtown if you're going to consolidate. And so we've been working with them. First, the city would acquire their facility in Dartmouth Worthington because we've got use for it. They could take the proceeds from that sale plus their existing resources and create a better facility in the downtown area. We're presently working with them on possibilities for a site. At this juncture, the decision-making is in their hands. We're waiting to hear their response. We just met with the Salvation Army within the last 2 weeks. It's probably about the 5th or 6th meeting we've had with them. And we're also meeting with others looking at a variety of sites downtown to get the best location and the best and the largest facility.
You may each take a 2-minute break from rebuttals. Mayor, would you like to rebut anything Alderman Soglin has said?
Neither Alderman Soglin nor myself.
Okay, next question. You both support ending veteran homelessness by the end of 2015 and chronic homelessness by the end of 2016. What is the plan to make this happen? Alderman Soglin? Alderman Resnick.
Where was I? Okay, veterans and chronic homelessness. First of all, we've had a series of meetings with the VA and county officials in regards to special work in regards to veterans. And one of the things I'm very proud of is we put in applications for VASH vouchers. Those are Section 8 vouchers where you can get increases in your allocation specifically for veterans, and we've been awarded them. So now we are working with private landlords and then trying to accommodate veterans who are eligible. And in addition, the Resnick project, as I said earlier, will be open hopefully within a year and a half. The key to this, especially with veterans, is having a good working relationship with the Veterans Administration and those both in Madison and Rockford who provide the direct services for veterans. I must say that despite the criticism that the VA has taken elsewhere around the United States, we've had nothing but an excellent, fine working relationship. And I'm confident that we're doing a good job in terms of our objective of getting veterans housed. One of the big challenges that we've learned from other cities who've gone about this is that there are some veterans who simply do not want to be in permanent housing. And it's going to take counseling and persistent work with them by qualified social workers. And let me point out that Dane County does not have enough social workers to solve this problem.
Alderman Resnick?
And I would add, it's taking our agencies that are on the ground, that are doing so much of this good work in the community, and seeing how other ways we can who are leveraging their work so we're all working towards the end common goal. In addition to that, it is reaching out in areas that we may not have full understanding of from in the city, whether it's the LGBTQ community and talking to folks over outreach to make sure that our plans are inclusive, and make sure that for residents that are actually using our services, that we're listening diligently to the feedback as our plans are coming forward, that we're taking that input and seriously making changes to our existing programs. I do believe we will get to these end goals. It will take collaboration, but I do know that the mayor and I still see this as a high priority for our administrations.
Question from the floor. Rumor is that feeding the State Street family who feeds homeless people on Saturday at 3 o'clock will be asked to leave the Philosopher's Store area. Is that true, and do you support it? Alderman Resnick?
I can't tell you if it's true or not, but what I will say is when it comes to the services needed, so we do provide that safety net in our community, whether that's food, whether that's a few dollars, whether that's bus passes, we need to ensure that we do have sites provided so individuals can receive food, that they do remain to have access in our community. But I cannot speak to exactly Philosopher's Stone's location.
That site is under review for changes in design right now, and while I'm aware of some of the suggestions to open up the space, I'm not aware that that issue has come up, so I will look into it when I get back. But I want to point out, particularly regarding that space, and we can't ignore this. It was also one of the problems that plagued Occupy Madison, that substance abuse and drug trafficking have been a problem. And that one of the things that happens is that there are predators who would take advantage of homeless people and others in that regard. And that's something that's become a major concern at that particular location. It's pretty well documented, and there's no denying it, and it's something that we've got to deal with, and will deal with as traffic in the area picks up this spring. But I know of no plans to relocate the meal program, but I will look into it.
I have been forced to be around homeless men at the shelter who have sicknesses. Some of them have lice and scabies, and others have mental health issues. Is there a plan to have a place for homeless to go with special needs? Mayor Soglin?
The city-county health department should be notified, and I'm kind of shocked that they haven't been, if that's the case. So what I'd ask is that if anyone's aware of any individuals with communicable diseases or illnesses, that they notify the operators of the shelter, and if that doesn't produce results, go directly to the city-county health department.
Alderman Resnick?
I would agree with that response and just say that you need to feel like your voice is being heard when you're making those complaints in. Because so often those who are our most vulnerable in our community try to speak their mind to public officials and feel like they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, and we're not seeing the results that they're looking for in this community in an area where we can improve upon and do better. But when it comes to issues of public health concerns, please do reach out to our Dane County Public Health Department.
Next question. How can city and county resources currently be used to police, prosecute, and jail people without housing being redirected so that people's actual needs are met, including providing them with supportive housing? Alder Resnick.
Homelessness should not be a crime. And when we look at someone who is penalized because they can't find a roof over their head, or simply put, they couldn't get into a shelter and have nowhere else to sleep, or are sitting in a very desperate and vulnerable situation, the result of it shouldn't be that someone receives a citation or trying to decide whether it's easier to spend a night in jail, or the cyclical issues of then paying that ticket. I do know that the city has been focused on municipal programs to ensure that homeless individuals are not repeat offenders in paying those tickets. I'm confident that many of our programs are working and putting in the right direction, but it does go into that homelessness should not be a crime in our community.
The city of Madison cannot solve this problem or all of these problems alone. First, let me point out that we're estimating that at least a quarter to maybe a third of the cost of operating both the Madison Police Department and the Madison Fire Department are incidents that involve substance abuse, that involve mental illness, and those are not limited to the homeless population. Not everyone who's homeless has these problems. Not everyone who has these problems are homeless. It is costing us tens of millions of dollars. There's obvious examples. There's the example of the individual who may have overdosed or consumed too much alcohol, who was transported to a detox facility. A detox facility that's been reduced in service in the last year. There may be someone with mental illness who has to be transported. But there's other things that aren't as obvious. A serious number of household fires that have occurred in the last year, which were set unintentionally and inattentively by people under the influence. There is the challenge of preventing this before it happens, before it leads to injury or death. We had a homicide on the square here 2 years ago where one homeless individual died at the hands of another homeless individual. We had a similar incident twice in the last several years. One involving someone who's homeless and one who's not, drowning. We had an incident 3 years ago, not during the winter, but during the summer, of someone dying of dehydration. My time's up, but I'll try and answer on the next question. It'll be answered.
Well, I think we're coming to a close, and each candidate is asked to make a closing statement of 3 minutes. Let's start with Mayor Soglin.
To finish what I was saying, the key here is understanding that the problem is universal. And we can document it. We've got incidents. One of the tragic ones was the story of a young man who was troubled in Black River Falls. The local police department put him on a bus and said, "There's people in Madison who can help you better than we can." And so he arrived in downtown Madison, and we caught up with him 3 days later, after he had set, 2 days later, after he had set his third fire. 2 downtown and 1 at a home where he managed to work out towards La Follette High School. The point is this: we need treatment, we need therapy, we need help in dealing with the frustration, with the dilemmas of not having sufficient income, not having a sufficient place to stay. I've constantly said there are 5 areas we have to be comprehensive. They are housing, and housing is first. Transportation, quality child care, because there are children involved. Health care. And health care includes mental health, and it includes nutrition. And finally, education and job training. There has to be a comprehensive strategy adopted. And the beauty of what was once a viable federal government is that money was collected on progressive taxation from all over the country and then redistributed to where there was the greatest need. So that even though the folks in Black River Falls or the young man whose family threw him out of the house in the town of Oregon last summer and he ended up in downtown Madison, would be sharing in the cost and the responsibility. And that's where we've got to take this discussion. Through the Conference of Mayors, I'm part of a task force that's working on these issues. Frankly, I'm not optimistic about how soon we're going to get a response from the Congress that is positive. But the same discussion has to be taken to the state legislature, and it has to be taken to county government. The reason we focus on the city of Madison is we are the most open and the most accessible. And that's good. But the responsibility is broader. Thank you.
Alderman Resnick.
On these issues, what we need to look at is over the course of the last 4 years, are we doing enough? Have we made enough progress? If we look back on what homelessness was exactly 4 years ago and the numbers, have we taken the steps in the right direction? Now, I will say in a number of areas, we've made progress. But in others, seeing how we could be leading at the local level to make sure that we're working alongside our partners at the county board, to ensure that we're all on the same page for what the strategy moving forward needs to be. Now, there's been a number of different efforts, and in many ways I applaud a lot of the efforts that have occurred within this city to sit down and try to ensure that we're moving here. But when we see fights about what's occurring out in front of City Hall, when we see the arguments about where someone would store their personal belongings, or how many additional years we need to wait for these problems to be addressed, I do believe the city can do more. Now, this is actually the last debate or forum between the mayor and myself closing out the our 9 month to a year campaign. I would encourage you to go out and vote on April 7th. I want to thank the mayor for being polite during this entire endeavor, and so many of you that followed us in this journey. So thank you so much.